Welcome to the Lights On podcast, featuring stories behind building and running successful hotel businesses. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Lights On podcast. I'm Kin Siu, CEO of Lights On, and your host today. On this podcast, we share stories across hospitality about building and growing hotel businesses. Today, I have Jason Brandt, President and CEO at Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, or ORLA. I'm going to formally introduce you in a second, Jason. Just before we get to that, I want to introduce to our listeners what we are at Lights On. We, Lights On, help hotels make more money in two ways. First, we get more travelers to find you, whether they're searching on ChatGPT, Google, or social media. And when somebody finds you, we want to make sure that the guests book you and not your competitors, and booking you with the most optimal rate possible, whether the booking is coming from direct on your website, OTA, or group sales. We recently helped a 36-room Florida resort make $400,000 more on revenue just in 6 weeks by looking through all the things, how people find properties, and making sure that the guests we book the properties with the most optimal rate. And if you want to find more about how that works, look at our website at lightson.co. And aside from all of that, I think really the key and why I started this show, the Lights On podcast, is not just about finding, optimizing the rate and things like that. There's just so many more in hospitality that help a hotel to be successful. And that's why having a guest like Jason today, just finding all the different angles, finding ways to educate how you can run your hotel business better. This is kind of a mission of this podcast. So back to you, Jason. President and CEO of ORLA. It is a pretty interesting show today because we've never kind of take this angle from a lodging association perspective. And I think it is a big force into lobbying and really advocating and representing the industry just across, different states in the nation. So also one of the things that hoteliers tend to overlook because hey, they have day in, day out, many stuff going on, right? Running a business, and sometimes just overlook, these things are external forces and advocate that can really, really help them with their business. So, Jason, can you share a little bit in the state of Oregon? I think you guys have built a very engaging communities of hoteliers and restaurant business owners and all of that. So, how big of the organization are we talking about in Oregon?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure to be here. Orla currently has just over 2,800 members around the state. About 2,000 of those are restaurant locations, and about 500 of those are lodging locations. And the rest are allied members like Lights On and other folks that are in the business of supporting and working alongside restaurants and lodging operations across the state.
Yeah, but if we look at the industry as a whole, right, hospitality is often one of the largest private sectors, for any states, right?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
big is that market when it comes to Oregon?
Yeah, pretty large. So we have over 10,000 food service establishments in Oregon and over 2,000 lodging properties. So you're looking at small business locations totaling over 12,000, employing close to 220,000 Oregonians at this point. So we are actually the second largest private sector employer in Oregon, only behind healthcare
Mm.
as an industry for jobs. So we pride ourselves on that. It's a very important role in the statewide economy, and our restaurant and lodging properties and our members across the state have a ton of experiences to offer for folks that are traveling either for leisure or for business. So yeah, it's an awesome job. You get to meet so many interesting people that are running all sorts of business models within the hospitality industry. So obviously we have a lot of different types of lodging structures and restaurant business models. And so we work with all sorts of employers, dependent on kind of how they're making their business go, and try to figure out how to walk alongside them to make them more successful.
Yeah, and one thing I would say, what I really appreciate as a business owner is, many people always say like, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner can be very lonely because like not many people around you or in your like social circle who will, run a business. So finding a community or an organization where you get to meet other people who are doing similar things, who share the same struggle, running a similar business, where you can really exchange ideas. And I think in the case of ORLA, aside from having the community, also knowing there is a aggregated effort to advocate for the industry. We're going to talk a little bit about, on the policy making side of things and, how that sometimes will make or break a business, right? But I think just, having that two layers, finding your pack, and then, sharing what's working, what's not working, what is top of mind, what's ahead of the industry. These are the things, information is very valuable. Like it is like knowledge is power, right? Versus
Absolutely.
running something on your own and not knowing what's going on. That that's kind of scary. I would say just running a business.
Yeah,
So
yeah. The goal of Orla is really to make sure no one feels isolated. So,
yep.
yeah, I think it's different than my previous stint as a CEO for the Salem Area Chamber before the Orla role. So I've been at Orla now 11 years as the CEO and was at the Chamber of Commerce in Salem for 11 years before that. But the unique thing about an industry association is the fact that these are competitors essentially coming together that are you know, kind of being more transparent, comparing notes, figuring out how to make the whole industry better. Not forgetting that they're competitors, but at the same time bringing a certain dose of transparency to how they're doing when they show up at annual events. A great example being our conference coming up in September, so September 12th through 14th at the River House in Bend. So that's we'll have over 300 members show up at our conference for that multi-day event, and constantly throughout those multiple days, people are sharing insights about their organizational cultures where they're having challenges. Maybe it's a sales issue where they feel like demand has really gotten lower and reduced over time, or maybe they're doing a lot better and they're in a growth mindset. They're adding locations. There's all sorts of different realities for the industry because there's just so many employers within it. But yeah, folks coming together. We usually have about 8 annual events a year.
Mm.
The conference being one of them. But they're great opportunities to meet other people and feel the opposite of feeling isolated, I guess, right? There's a sense of togetherness and that adding all of our voices together makes us the strongest we can be
Yeah.
to adequately represent the size and scope of the industry as well, just given how large we are as an employment base in Oregon.
Yep. Yeah. And speaking of the conference in September, I also want to give a big shout out to your colleague, Marla Douglas, Director of Business Development at ORLA. Obviously, I work with Marla pretty closely just on, being an ally member side of things, but she's also a big driver or, getting some of these events together. And we all know when it comes to organizing events, it's lots of work behind the scenes. So thanks a lot, Marla, for getting some of those gatherings together. I think those, Jason, to your point, it is almost a ceremony, right? When, yes, getting into business is competitive, sometimes looking at other hotels or other restaurants being competitors, but, there is a moment where we can actually come and actually, aggregate our voice and share the top of mind. It's kind of like a frenemy situations, but I'm always advocating for, when it comes to hospitality, it is the destination should sit above any individual businesses, right? If
Yeah, for
Oregon
sure.
is strong and people has an interest coming into traveling to Oregon and see what Oregon has to offer, because like being in Hawaii and in Seattle, we know Pacific Northwest, it just there's so much to offer when it comes to all the natural scene and all that. So we gotta like make people are travelers, especially out of state, international, be interested about the destination first. Then you're gonna find a way to compete for the demand coming in. So I think before thinking about our own individual hotel or restaurant, finding ways to help our destination be better. And I
Yeah.
think these are the key moments to gather and find ways to make that happen.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, in addition to all of our hotel members that have budgets to do their own marketing and advertising deployments, we work pretty closely as a state association with the organizations that receive local and state lodging taxes to accomplish those same pursuits, but at a more global scale. So, Travel Oregon as a beneficiary of the statewide lodging tax, and then our local and regional destination marketing organizations. So, these are the Travel Portlands and the Travel Salems and the Travel Bends, the Travel Lane counties of the world. They have their own independent boards as nonprofits and are deploying as much of their resources as they can to bring in more conferences, but also to promote leisure travel. So those organizations are really on the front lines to assist the lodging operators and the restaurants with revenue inbound to keep the small business afloat. I would say Orla really specializes on the expense side of the budget. So a lot of our members feel like it's death by a thousand cuts right now. It's like nothing seems to be going down in price. Everything's just going up. And when is it ever going to stop? We hear a lot about that. So we're spending more time not just on the core of government advocacy and making sure we're sharing industry intelligence, but also trying to put together cost savings programs for members. And sometimes those things are overlooked. It's just, as you mentioned earlier, lodging, restaurant operations. I mean, they just get so busy. They sometimes forget to look up and be like, oh, yeah, I have a partner here. I could be a member of Orla and access all these group savings programs. An example of which, like insurance costs for lodging properties are going through the roof. Same for restaurants. So we're seeing property and casualty insurance like double or triple in some cases. So we have a hospitality insurance program as one example at Orla, and the average member savings is over $3,500 in annual premium cost back to those members that are in the program. So, that's just one example of how being a member can actually save you more money than any membership cost or time investment. Um, so yeah, we just encourage people to take a look and really think about it from a business standpoint, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense to leave the voluntary state association you could be a part of on the sidelines if you join a couple of these group programs, and it pays for the membership and then saves you more money on top of that. So that's a part of what we do as well.
Great. So we're gonna dive deep into that part as well as some of the policy making and advocacy that you guys are helping for the industry, right? But first of all, back to you, Jason. So you mentioned before ORLA, right? Before leading to this organization, you were in the Chamber of Commerce side of things, which is more like, general business side of things. And, before that, right? I'm curious how you even got started in hospitality and, getting to the Chamber of Commerce and then at some point decided to going all in for hospitality.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Happy to share. So, back in high school, actually, growing up here in Oregon, I always thought it'd be really fun to run a hotel. And there at the time I was going to high school, so back in the late 1990s, there wasn't any electives or anything that I could take to learn more about being a hotel executive. Fast forward into college, I had the opportunity to be a catering manager for the university where I got my business degree. And so I'd have the opportunity to engage fully in food service, catering groups at the university from like 12 people all the way up to hundreds of people, and managing a team of people, my student counterparts that also had these part-time jobs to provide some hospitality to those that were visiting the university, investors, scholarship recipients, students, families, and friends. So I kind of fell in love with the industry, I think, through a combination of both just a general desire. It's like, wow, hotels seem so cool. It would be awesome to be a part of people's experiences getting out and about, whether it's for fun or for business. And then into college, learning that I really loved food service and loved helping manage a team and have a lot of fun while we're delivering great service. So yeah, fast forward to graduating from college, I was lucky enough to land an entry level job at a chamber of commerce where I lived, and the rest is kind of history. I always still had that passion for hospitality as I was representing businesses in general over those 11 years at the chamber. But there was an opportunity that presented itself to be a part of a colleague's succession plan into retirement, and the stars aligned, and here we are 11 years later.
Wow. Okay. So it's and I kind of find the commonalities across, many guests that are in the field. There's always kind of that passion about hospitality to be able to stick around because that we all know this industry has one of the fastest employee turnaround, and especially kind of going through the COVID time, right? We saw many people really leaving the industries and never come back. It's not the easiest job to do lots of that and show that hospitality to people, to make people have the feeling the happiness, that the memory side of things, because a lot of the spotlights are on the guest side of things, but not necessarily on the staff side of things,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So how do you see, because I now in this industry for many years, and particularly what you do right now, I'm sure kind of thinking about labor and just participants in the industry, right? It is l- lots of people, lots of labor intensive. Number two profit sector in the States, also high turnover, right? So it's almost like a blessing and a curse to be in this industry when you're working with all these amazing people, but it could be the next day this person decide to leave the industry.
Yeah.
So how are you seeing that trend over time, just from the time you were in the industry? And like, is there a way to really stabilize and retain good people as a business owner, and make sure that the staff are happy, the guests are happy, and everyone is happy?
Yeah, there certainly is. I mean, I would say the answer to the question is really it continues to be a mixed bag of realities when it comes to employee turnover for our members. Just looking at that over 11 years, there always seems to be bright spots. Hospitality operators that are very intentional and leaning into what they're doing culturally, what it means to belong to an organization, which you could argue is more important now than maybe it's ever been. Gen Zers in particular have very little interest um, in general. I don't want to stereotype too much, but there's a broader movement within Gen Z to focus less on the ambition of getting to the next job title and more on that work-life balance and trying to find a certain level of independence with your own self-worth and identity away from work, which is quite a change from the millennial generation, which I'm a part of. So that's a tough dynamic to face. So if you have Gen Zers that are willing to consider a hospitality job, you really need to make sure you're being intentional about your company culture. What does it mean to be a part of your hospitality business? What are the types of perks and benefits you're able to provide to showcase that you're not just providing lip service, you actually have foundational elements associated with what it means to belong to that team, that hospitality company. So some of the companies that are coming to mind right now as I'm speaking have very intentional corporate culture engagements. They could have like perks where they're helping pay for mortgages for employees. Maybe perks tied to other lodging and restaurant businesses. So the amount of discretionary income you have to spend to go enjoy yourself in our industry, but not where you work, like having some perks there tied to other industry colleagues that might have their own lodging properties that maybe your employees want to visit when they have some time off. Those types of perks are things that are being leveraged more often, but there's still a lot of gaps. There's still a lot of lodging and restaurant owners that aren't doing what they need to do to reduce their turnover. It's kind of, the same old traditional approach, more transactional in nature, where, hey, we're providing you a good job that has flexible hours and you're going to make some money via your paycheck and your tips. Don't expect much more of me beyond that. And that's kind of it. that's probably, if we were to do like a comprehensive study, I think we'd see a pretty natural delta between those that are putting together cultural policies that empower their employees and show how much they mean to the organization
Yeah.
versus those that have more traditional models that are still dealing with the same issues season over season based on demand and having to lay off workers and then hire them again before the next shoulder season into peak season of summer. So I've certainly seen that over the 11 years, and I would say that we're trying to do more as an organization and sharing that industry intelligence. So sharing more best practices from some of the most impressive hospitality companies to hopefully help others improve their corporate cultures and in turn reduce their turnover of employees.
Yeah, and business owners in hospitality industry naturally, I think will have that thinking for the guest already, right? Because we
Right.
always advocate a lot about you don't want to go out and just purely compete based on price. We want guests to come in and choose to dine at your restaurants or come to your hotel because of the really that emotional value. Like what can you provide beyond just a price tag, right? That's why they're gonna choose you versus another big box properties, right? If purely on price, I might just go for the big box for the consistency, right? Because we work a lot with independent hotels, and we know each independent hotels usually have that uniqueness of the culture, the vibe, the feel, and why people will want to come to experience that. Kind of the same mindset. If we're gonna shift that to how we are um, hiring and caring for the staff team, I think some of the past guests that are really like to talk about, when you kind of applying that to the team, the team tends to really reflect that to the guests as well. So it's a win-win, right? Finding ways to treat your team well, and I think from that part, making sure that people actually retain and has a reason to stay, not just because the business $6 pays for maybe $2 more per hour, then they're just gonna
Right.
go over, right? So I think the business owners here already have that mindset. So just doing the sunny tweak and start thinking how to treat the team with that mentality as well. I think the transformation would be surprising for many.
Yeah,
So
I mean, if you haven't even thought about this or feel like you're listening to this and you haven't been intentional about your culture in some time, the place to really start with all of this is really defining who you are as a company. What are your core values, right? And then you use those core values once they're finalized as a part of how you bring people onto your team. So when people are interested in the job openings you have, making sure that there's alignment with that individual's core values and the company's core values. If you do that as a foundational practice, then you have the opportunity to reduce your turnover as long as you lean in and you're intentional with, that list of things that you offer your staff, whatever those perks and extras look like beyond just the hourly wage. So yeah, there's so much opportunity to improve in that space, not just for our industry in Oregon, but frankly
mm,
across the nation and the world when it comes to how we look at our guest. I mean, you mentioned looking at our guests and having that top tier service. We like to say at Orla, we serve Oregon hospitality. And if you use that slogan, not just for the guests that show up at your hotel or your restaurant, but you also use that as kind of a mindset for how you think about your teammates, then you're on the right track.
100%, 100%. So aside from culture, I think the other big part about team members and staff is skill sets. What I find is, especially for many entry levels, there's always a stigma of okay, the job is so easy. There's not much training you have to do. There's not much onboarding you have to do, which turns out to be a major killer of why employees dissatisfactions arise, right? When come in just not knowing what to do for a week and just try to figure things out, right? I think just that process could be pretty brutal. So do you have any tips or resources you can help our business owner to really think about onboarding and training the right way so the staff team can feel prepared for everything hospitality get destroyed at them?
Yeah, I mean, part of what we do, in addition to the industry intelligence, the government advocacy, the products and services where we're trying to save members money, the other area of Orla is workforce development. We have a 501(c)(3 called the Oregon Hospitality Foundation that really focuses on all those trainings and certifications that are industry recognized. And we don't have to create those ourselves because those standards exist across the whole nation. So we have a formal partnership with national organizations like the National Restaurant Association, the American Hotel and Lodging Education Institute, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, the Asian American Hotel Owners Association. All these groups are formal official partners of Orla for state training and certifications. And they have a whole host of different resources, trainings available online and some in person that hospitality operators can certainly take advantage of.
Hmm,
But when you're talking about like that entry level experience during the first week, that's a great candidate for some of the online training products that the American Hotel and Lodging Education Institute has. And those are all available online, very easy to find. But a number of our members use a variety of different training modules. Sometimes they're provided by brands based on brand standards. Others, like the ones you were mentioning earlier, are members that are independent hotels and they're not tied to a brand. They might find a lot more interest in these types of products from the national groups.
I see. I see. That makes sense. So, I mean, we talk about training, we talk about culture. So now tying that back to our financials, right? To your point earlier, when everything, the cost is rising, inflation and all of that. So we kind of talk about ways where insurance, for example, there's way to really group a lot of business owners together in the same industry to try to get for a volume discount for that kind of program. What can be done on the labor side of things, right? Aside from obviously wages is always one of the biggest cost factor for running a hospitality business, but there is also kind of the surrounding, the benefits, the insurance to the team and things like that. Are there
Yeah.
opportunities for somebody talking to a larger organization to get some of the savings from there too?
Yeah, I think one of the recent opportunities we're exploring right now is making sure that employers have an opportunity to reduce their FICA taxes.
Mm.
So currently, we aren't seeing enough hospitality operators support their employees by setting up FSA accounts.
Mm.
So think about all the federal opportunity there is to create your own savings account for your health expenses. And there's a way to create that, have an available savings account for employees, not change their net take home pay, and reduce your employer FICA taxes. And
Oh,
it
that's
could be,
interesting.
yeah, thousands and thousands of dollars that could be saved overnight by implementing an FSA wellness program for your employees. That doesn't cost you anything. It actually saves you money on the dollars you're shipping out the door to the federal government. So, those are unique opportunities that I think historically our industry could take better advantage of. And so we're looking to create some of those types of partnerships moving forward and kind of create a win-win-win where,
Yeah.
it kind of supports the corporate culture too, because your employer can say, hey, employees, we're setting up these FSA accounts. You're going to see less money out of your own paycheck going to FICA taxes. That money is going into this savings account instead. It won't affect your take home pay. So the employee wins because they're still taking home the same amount of money. They win again because they have an FSA account on top of their take home pay for their health expenses. And the employer wins because they're reducing their employer FICA taxes. So kind of a win all the way around, no kind of a no-brainer, but a bit complicated and probably the reason why more hospitality operators haven't set up FSA accounts for their employees.
That's interesting. Does ORLA have any sort of resources that we can point people to just to
Yeah,
understand that?
they would just need to reach out to the individual you mentioned earlier, Marla Douglas. We haven't gone live yet with a
Mm.
partner program on this. It's actually kind of in an exploratory process now. But for anyone listening to this, Marla's information and my information is really easy to find on the Orla website. You can just send us an email, and we'll connect you with the company that will most likely be a partner of ours in the year to come. But no reason to wait until that's officially launched. They've already been making a big difference for a number of small businesses in various industries, not just hospitality, to set up these wellness accounts and perks. So yeah, we're happy to get that started for anyone out there that wants to start saving FICA employer taxes immediately and do something good for their employees. It's easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously we'll put Jason's and Marla's contact information in the show note just for people easy to find. Great. So let's switch gear a little bit to a more sensitive topic, government policies. I think this is the part where it always triggers quite a bit of debate, but I honestly I don't care about having some of those debates here because I think it's very critical part of running a hospitality business, and I think the biggest topics all the time, not just for Oregon, but just for any states that I interact with, is the lodging tax. I think this is really a biggest level where and it's always a level from a state government perspective to find ways to raise fund to do certain initiatives. From the hotel side of things, probably restaurants as well. That becomes another tax that could drive more business away. We in Hawaii, right? We constantly dealing with kind of the tax situation, and we know that like when you having this many line items of taxes on your folio when you checked out, people get irritated. So what's your whole viewpoint, and do you have a framework of how to think about this as a business owner, and what can every individual business do to help and potentially influence some of those decisions?
Yeah, great questions. I would say in general, lodging operators across the nation probably feel unfairly targeted by tax increases. And it has a lot to do with kind of the dynamics of elections and democracy, right? It's a lot easier to tax someone that doesn't vote for your reelection than it is to vote for the people that you want to vote for you. So if you're going to raise a tax on them, you might feel that if you have aspirations to continue serving in elected office. But if you raise a tax on a guest that isn't in the voting populace for your race, then that's maybe an easier pill to swallow. So yeah, we're constantly dealing with that. There's a lot of different local lodging taxes across Oregon. There's over 100 of them. We estimate about 120 different local lodging taxes at the city and county levels of government. And then in addition to that, we have a statewide lodging tax. So these taxes layer on top of each other, and they can be as much as 16% of the total lodging stay if you're in a place like the city of Portland, for example, when you add all of those taxing layers on top of each other. So yeah, it becomes a very important role for us to play at ORLA, representing the industry voice, representing fairness, making sure lodging operators as employers themselves have their seat at the table and are testifying and submitting written testimony in front of the Oregon State Legislature or sometimes the local government body, whether that's a city council or a county commission. Very, very important work, especially in a state like Oregon without a broad-based sales tax. So sometimes I think we feel even targeted even more than some other states because elected officials, in many respects, don't have much of an appetite for a sales tax. But if they can continue increasing taxes on people that aren't their voters, then that's easier than launching a sales tax for the first time. So yeah, we're out there in Oregon as one of only 4 states left in the country without a sales tax. If Alaska technically would be 5, but they have local bureaus with local sales taxes, just not a state one. But yeah, we're one. If you don't count Alaska, there's only 4 of us left that don't have a state sales tax. So I think for our industry, that makes a bigger target on our back, and unfortunately for us, results in a lot more of a defensive posture where we're constantly defending the industry instead of having the bandwidth to like hold the football in a football game and score some touchdowns or some field goals. Instead, where it almost feels like our defense is constantly out on the field trying to stop them from doing another bad thing that's going to harm job creation and harm business growth, which ultimately governments need to sustain themselves, So the irony isn't lost on us. It's a lot of the local governments are intrinsically tied to the lodging operations because if the lodging operations are doing great, that means more tax revenue for the local government, right? So you would think that all of the local governments want the lodging operations to have the most impressive sales numbers they could possibly imagine because the local governments get a piece of that. But that's not typically what we find the mindset being for local elected officials. It seems more focused on, well, if it's like short-term thinking, trying to balance a budget, and hey, if we increase this lodging tax by X%, then we'll be able to put more money towards the jail operation or, improve a street for the dollars that don't have to be spent on tourism. And there's laws that govern that. But instead, instead of thinking of having that short-term thinking, if they thought long-term and like every local government had a task force of lodging operators in partnership with their local chamber or their destination marketing organization, and the whole goal of that group was to initiate record-breaking sales for the lodging industry, then everyone in that group would win as long as they're being mindful of, community impacts, environmental stewardship, quality of life for residents. You can keep all those things in mind and have record-breaking sales, and then everyone wins. But instead, we find this like kind of myopic, short-term thinking being kind of overly persistent within the local government world, trying to fix a short-term problem instead of having bigger thinking, more visionary thinking about what could be accomplished if we thought multiple years out instead of just how to balance our budget coming up,
Yeah.
July 1st, typically for our governments here.
Yeah, and before you know it, some of those short-term mitigation and thinking, it just got stuck there forever. It became a long-term thing, and it's very challenging to really unwind that. But not to say that tax is not always bad, right? If I think about good examples historically, right? Thinking about Las Vegas, the way that Las Vegas got to where they are, right? Because at some point they have to start putting in the lodging tax to actually using that funding to build out their event and conference infrastructure that, at some point getting to, where they are, right? Now they have a very, a huge prosperous event industry, all coming from the right planning and that long-term thinking of using the tax dollar for the right thing. So just to help hotel and restaurants owners, right, thinking about what to advocate, what not to advocate, what means a long-term benefits, what means a short-term damage. Like how should do you have a framework or just a way to help people think about kind of that causation and how they think what's right versus wrong from their perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I usually hear our lodging operators, our members, talking about the importance of the multiplier effect. So when a tax dollar is collected from a lodging operation, they want to make sure that most of that money, if possible, can go into outbound marketing. Because if we're sending that dollar out, that's the most likely way for us to gain visitor spending dollars that otherwise would never come to Oregon, would never come to that local economy. So the essence of lodging taxes should be an export economy function. It's an economic development tool that brings in more money than is being shipped out. So that's what folks want to see the most. And if they're having conversations with elected officials, typically it's okay, I understand why you need to, fix that police station or improve a jail operation or expand your search and rescue team to save people on a mountain or in the ocean, those types of things. We all know those things are important, but we also want to make sure that we're not taking our eye off the prize and sending those dollars outbound to bring many more dollars back that would never otherwise come to Oregon. And people underestimate the essence of how the tourism industry works. I mean, I think people that aren't tied to the industry think, well, people are going to come to our state no matter what. Yeah, that's a certain subset of visitors are going to come to your state no matter what. But there's a whole myriad of of consumers out there that you might not even be on their radar screen unless you're in the business of trip ideation.
Yep.
You need to create a brand and an identity for your destination, for your state, and inspire travel and inspire the experiences that they see in their mind in their future for themselves, their families, their friends, whoever they want to travel with. Get them excited about going somewhere. And that's how you bring in the visitors' spending dollars. Otherwise, those could go to Las Vegas or somewhere else. So you're absolutely right. Like building the promotional arm of what we do, but also making sure the tourism related facility infrastructure is in place for conferences, for sporting events. Those things are absolutely critical to the success of any local economy.
Yeah, and really just want to add to that, because we kind of talk about destination being like that one layer above all the individual businesses underneath it, right? So to your point, consumers and travelers, they have so much options nowadays. Like, why would they, like in this case, why would they come to Oregon and not Washington or British Columbia and just in any other states, right? Like at that level, people have to first of all have the mind right to, oh, I want to see what Oregon is about, right? Or maybe certain destinations in Oregon. And then really from there, before they start thinking about planning their trips, planning for accommodations, planning for what to eat while they're here. Like, that is usually for the most part, right? The first decision point for lots of the travelers, right? Obviously, they're always almost at the master, the world-class level destination or properties where, there will be hotels or restaurants that people, come to this location because of that. I think that's usually, the tiny fraction of all the businesses out there. For the most part, destination comes first, and
Yeah.
finding ways to and I think, aside from taxation perspective, right, I think the mindset I like to always like talk to our hotel partners is that finding ways to contribute and participate into marketing your destination, sometimes not just about your restaurants or your hotel. As you're building, social media programs or social media content, awareness content that kind of take that in mind to also showcase the destination, not just your pretty room or pretty lobby, but like, okay, now, for example, take Portland, for example, right? If you are a hospitality business in Oregon, in Portland, like what should people do when they're in Portland, right? Plan a trip for them, write their content, build their content, and give them a reason to come here and also come to your business, right? I think those tend to go a long way than just showing, the again back to the pretty dish or the pretty room. There are just too many of that on the internet, right? I think people now looking for a deeper experience to give themselves a reason to explore.
Yeah, I think more hotels, I mean, outside of our full service resorts and some of those hotel properties, a lot of people are not booking a hotel room to hang out in the lobby in the hotel room, right? They're there for other reasons. So yeah, I think the most sophisticated lodging operators are thinking about this as a multidimensional experience for their guests. So they're leveraging the strengths of whatever the local economy or regional economy has to offer in the way of amenities, whether it's like a world famous Oregon coastline that's completely publicly accessible from the California border up to the Washington border, or whether it's the Cascade Mountain Range, all the outdoor activities there, or the wine region in the Willamette Valley, one of the highest ranked wine regions in the country. I mean, you can't really get around to as many wineries as you can in Oregon as fast as you can for different wine tasting experiences. And then, of course, Portland is still a top tier food scene destination. The amount of restaurants and the authenticity you experience in restaurants in the Portland region's dining scene is truly unparalleled. It's still very strong, even though independent restaurants are having a heck of a time staying in business. We have so many great places to eat and dine to complement the experience you'll have when you're staying at a hotel and enjoying their lobby. So yeah, the most sophisticated operators out there are creating that multidimensional experience in the minds of their guests before they even enter the door of their hotel.
Yeah, and Jason, I have to second the food scene in Portland. I think I spent what 10 plus years in Seattle, and we like to go to Portland from time to time. Still sell tax for that's a major attraction for the travel. But I think my first time to Portland, I was so amazed with the local food scene. I can I have to go back again. Like it's just the variety and the mixture of just different food scene from different culture, and yeah, the food is really amazing. I just okay, now I feel like I have to plan for a trip for that.
We really
Hey,
notice it
yeah,
when myself and my teammates travel to other states. We really notice how much we're missing the food scene. So we're
yeah,
always happy to come back to Oregon. And a lot of that has to do with all the agricultural products we can grow here. We have over 220 different commodities that grow in Oregon,
mm,
and all the value added products that are created from those commodities that grow in our soil. We're just very fortunate in what we have going for us from a soil perspective, from
interesting.
what's been created in Oregon. And so some of the best restaurants have the freshest ingredients because they're so close to a multitude of farms and agricultural operations. So that's we're basically we have a whole food brand that we really need to be cultivating here, because we have such a massive competitive advantage because of our landscape.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something I think you'll see more of in the future from myself and then our counterparts that care deeply about Oregon's food scene in the coming years.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, even talking about the ORLA conference happening in September in Bend, Oregon, right? Another
Yeah.
favorite town of Oregon on my list. The scene of the breweries, the microbreweries there is awesome. Mara actually even let me know, not just breweries, actually the cocktails there. Like she actually sent me a few spots. I was like, oh, I did not even know that. So just anyone traveling to Bend for the conference this year, just gotta check out the breweries and the cocktails in there for sure.
Yeah, crafted beverages are a real thing. They're still alive and they're having their own headwinds when it comes to sustaining operations. But at the same time, we still have so much to offer.
Yeah.
Wineries, breweries, cideries, but also, like to your point, local distilleries that sometimes are under the radar, but a
Yep.
lot of really great products, liquor products as well, that complement all the culinary
Yep.
experiences that restaurants are creating. So, yeah, so much to offer.
Yes.
Definitely worth a visit if you haven't been to Oregon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this has been great. So, last question for you before we get us out of here. So, yeah, we talk a lot about the work that you do in Oregon and all that, and I really want to give other listeners who are from other states a sense of why for those who are participating in your local lodging association, great kudos to you. I think keep doing that and keep making your local destination better. For operators that never participated or even like know if there's a kind of local lodging association exists, right? For them to engage with the association, right? What are the few tips that you have for them to kind of ask about what the lodging association could offer? What are the things to really help their business be better? What
Yeah,
should be the right questions to ask to these, to their corresponding local lodging associations?
sure. Yeah, I would just say you really have nothing to lose and everything to gain by being a part of groups that don't have to exist. Like the State Association of Orla would not exist if there wasn't a reason, a value for all these operations to come together. And then having over 2,800 members, year in and year out that are voluntarily a part of this association, it tells you that there's value there. They see there's power in being connected to your peer set to share best practices, to build lifelong relationships and friendships, to leverage your state association to save money on things you have to buy anyway to make your business go, to lend your voice to uh, policy issues when they do come up, and local or state government is trying to tax you more, but they're not trying to tax the business next door to you in the same way. Those are all reasons why we're stronger together. So yeah, there's just so many different things, so many reasons why people join. They rarely look the same, but they're all welcome, and we pride ourselves on our accessibility. We want everyone to be successful in this industry, whether they're a member or not, and we'll always lend a helping hand to anyone that reaches out to us, regardless of their membership status. And that's really what your state association should be. So if you want to join us, if those core values seem to align with who you are, we'd love to have you as a part of the ORLA membership. That's what we're here for.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jason. Thank you very much for your time today. Aside from, we'll put Orla's link and your and Marla's contact information in the show notes. Are there any ways that people can learn more about you and what Orla has been up to?
Yeah, I would just put you can put our contact email addresses, and then you can also just have the ORLA official website there with it to learn more information about ORLA. And then, through that link, they'll be able to join or, research about our events or the foundation or the government advocacy work, any of that stuff, so they can kind of go wherever their interests lie from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Thanks a lot for your wisdom today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for listening to the Lights On podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.